I politely said no when my neighbor asked to cut through my kitchen during her renovation. That evening, my kitchen window was smashed and my family recipes were soaked and torn. She looked at the damage and said, "Maybe you shouldn't hoard tradition." I tried to stay calm, until I saw my grandmother's cookbook listed for sale online with her name on the cover, and when I ordered a copy, I didn't sleep that night. I sat at the table staring at her name on the cover of that book. Carly Devereux. Like she was some kind of homegrown chef. The kind that grew up elbow-deep in flour and lard, with grandmothers who smacked hands away from the pie crust and cousins who brought beer to Sunday stews. But no. That was my childhood. Those were my people. My memories. My history. And this woman, this neighbor who lived 20 steps away from my door, had stolen it. It wasn't even that she used the recipes. I've shared some before with friends. Even strangers online. Food should be shared. But she didn't ask. She didn't honor where they came from. She took them, twisted them, and slapped her name on the cover like it was hers to own. And worst of all, people were buying it. I searched her name and found a local interview she did with a podcast about Midwest food revival. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She talked about her Braytan's handwritten notes, and how the book came out of a desire to preserve lost traditions. She smiled while she said it. Laughed even. Like she was proud. I wanted to scream. Instead, I started planning. First, I needed proof. More than my word against hers. I went through what was left of my grandmother's original recipe notes. The ones that weren't destroyed in the break-in. I found several where my grandmother had scribbled little personal notes. Stuff no one could have made up. Like the meatloaf card that said, "Use breadcrumbs if out of crackers. Howard hated soggy meat." Howard was my grandfather. Long gone. But no one outside our family would ever know that. I flipped through Carly's book again. And there it was. For a drier texture, use breadcrumbs. My Uncle Howard hated soggy meat. She didn't even bother to change the names. I took photos. Screenshots. Side-by-side comparisons. Then I started digging. Turns out Carly hadn't just self-published the book. She'd gotten a deal with a small regional press out of Chicago. They had real distribution. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, indie bookstores across the Midwest. That's when it hit me how serious this was. She was making money. Not just a little. Her social media had grown fast. Instagram, TikTok, even Pinterest. All filled with my grandmother's recipes styled and photographed like she came up with them. She had a whole Sunday dumpling series. That was our thing. I remembered sitting on the floor of my grandma's kitchen every Sunday as a kid, rolling dough while polka music played on the radio. She stole that too. I called the publishing company. I explained everything. They were polite, but cold. Told me any disputes needed to be handled legally and that they weren't liable for author-submitted content. They hung up fast. So I called a lawyer. I couldn't afford a big legal fight, but I wanted to know what my rights were. I met with a local guy who mostly did contracts and estate stuff, but he listened carefully. I showed him the recipes. The book. The timelines. He nodded a lot. Then he said the words I didn't want to hear. It's not easy. Recipes by themselves aren't usually copyright protected unless they're part of a larger body of work, like a book with unique content. But if you can prove the content was taken directly from unpublished family documents, especially with personal notations, you might have a case. Might. It wasn't enough. I needed more. So I did something I hadn't done in years. I logged into my old family recipe blog. It was dusty, barely used since 2017, but I still had a few posts up. Including one that had a story about my grandma's Christmas pie, word for word how it appeared in Carly's book. With my photos. Taken in my kitchen. There it was. Concrete proof she stole from a published source. I posted the comparison on the blog. Then I posted it on Reddit. then Twitter, Facebook. I even emailed it to some food bloggers I followed. I didn't think anything would come of it. But it spread. Fast. By the next day, people were tagging Carly in comments. Her Instagram page exploded with angry replies. Someone made a side-by-side TikTok showing her fake family notes next to my old blog post. Then a food ethics podcast picked it up. The comments went from fan praise to fire. People wanted answers. She posted a vague, "Sorry if I offended anyone" story on Instagram. But it didn't help. In fact, it made people angrier. And that's when things really started to spiral. Because someone, somewhere, must have tipped off the publisher. Or maybe they saw the blog post. Either way, her book listing on Amazon suddenly changed. It went from "ships in 2 days" to "currently unavailable." A few days later, it was gone altogether. But I wasn't done. Not even close. I still hadn't confronted her face to face. I wanted her to see my face when I asked her why. So I waited. And one afternoon, as she was watering her fake potted plants on her porch like she hadn't stolen 3 generations of my family's legacy, I walked up to her driveway. I didn't yell. I didn't swing. I held up her book. "You want to explain to me," I said, "why my grandmother's meatloaf recipe, with her husband's name in it, is on page 47 of your cookbook?" She froze. The hose kept running, spraying her foot. She looked like a child caught cheating on a test. Then, just like that, she turned the smirk back on. "You can't own meatloaf," she said. "It's food. People share food. You said no when I asked to use your kitchen. You were selfish. Maybe this is what happens when you keep everything to yourself." She stepped closer. I didn't take anything that wasn't already out there. That's when I realized she didn't think she did anything wrong. She truly believed she deserved it. That this wasn't theft. That it was some kind of payback. I didn't say another word. But I made a silent promise to myself. She was going to learn exactly what happens when you mess with someone's blood, memory, and family. This wasn't about recipes anymore. It was about respect. And I was going to make sure she never forgot it. I didn't talk to Carly after that. Not for weeks. But I watched. Her fake empire was crumbling fast. Her Instagram went private. Her publisher dropped her. And people in the neighborhood were starting to whisper. Still, she walked around like nothing happened. Smiling at neighbors. Jogging with her earbuds in. Even waving at me like we were still friendly. But then I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was Ava, a food blogger in Milwaukee who had done a review of Carly's cookbook before everything blew up. She told me something that made my stomach twist. "Just a heads up," she said. "Carly's been reaching out to smaller bloggers, telling them you're the one who stole her family recipes and that she's building a case against you for defamation." I sat down hard. She said what? Yeah. I didn't believe her, don't worry. I checked timestamps, your blog, all of it. She's full of it. But I figured you should know. She's not letting this go quietly. Carly was flipping the story, trying to paint herself as the victim. I felt sick all over again. The next morning, I found something even worse. I was walking back from the mailbox when I saw it, a flyer taped to a streetlight at the end of our block. It had my name on it. A photo of me from my Facebook page. And bold letters that said, "Local woman exposed for harassing single mom over family recipes, when culture becomes control." It even listed a fake website link underneath, which just redirected to a blank page. Probably meant to scare people. She was trying to ruin my name in our own neighborhood. I took down the flyer and kept walking. But 2 more were posted on different corners. That's when I snapped. Not just because she was lying, but because she was trying to erase what my grandmother gave me. Like it never mattered. Like it was some open buffet for anyone who felt entitled enough to take it. I went home. And I got organized. I gathered every surviving recipe, scanned them, made digital backups. Every margin note, every stain, every story. Then I did something I'd been scared to do for years. I started working on my own book. Not for profit. Not to sell. Just to make sure no one could ever take them away from me again. I included the origin of each recipe. A short story about who taught it to me, and where. Some were from my grandma's Detroit kitchen. Others came from her sister in Escanaba. Some were picked up during hard years, like the bean stew from 1982 when meat was too expensive. But I didn't stop there. I called Ava back. Asked if she'd be willing to help me get the story out, not just about Carly stealing from me, but about how often this kind of thing happens. Real traditions taken and rebranded by people who don't care where they came from. She said yes. She shared the blog post. So did others. A food justice YouTuber did a video on it titled, Recipe Theft in Real Life. The true story behind a stolen cookbook. It got over 600,000 views in a week. That's when Carly finally snapped back. Late one night, around 11:30 p.m., someone knocked on my door. Loud. Over and over. I looked through the peephole. Carly. Barefoot. In pajamas. Hair wild. I didn't open it. Just asked through the door. What do you want? She screamed. You ruined me. I lost everything because of your little sob story. I said, you lost everything because you stole what wasn't yours. You're nobody. You've never done anything. I made your stupid recipes better. I could hear her breathing hard. You're a lonely freak with a dead woman's notebook. That's all you are. I didn't say anything. I just called the police. She was gone before they arrived, but I filed a report. After that, I put up cameras. And I started sleeping with a bat next to the bed. But I wasn't scared. Not really. I was angry. I knew it wasn't over. Because people like Carly? They don't stop until someone makes them stop. And I wasn't finished yet. A week after the midnight door pounding, I noticed Carly's car was gone for a few days. No movement at her house. No lights at night. No trash cans put out. Just silence. At first, I thought maybe she finally gave up and left town. But then a white SUV showed up in her driveway. A man and woman got out, mid-40s maybe, dressed business casual. They walked around the side of the house like they owned the place. Later that afternoon, I got an email from a woman named Sophie R., from a production company out of Chicago. She said they were working on a docuseries about small-town culinary influencers, and were interviewing Carly for an upcoming episode. I reread it 3 times. Carly was pitching herself as the comeback story. I responded right away. I told Sophie I had proof that Carly's book wasn't original. That she'd stolen the recipes and even tried to gaslight and smear me after being caught. I attached screenshots, the blog posts, the police report, even audio clips from her fake podcast appearances. No reply. 2 days later, I saw Sophie and her cameraman filming Carly on her porch. Laughing. Holding a tray of cookies that I know came from my grandmother's Christmas recipe. That was the moment I stopped waiting for someone else to help. I got in touch with someone Carly didn't know I knew. Janelle, a woman from my church, used to work with Carly in Traverse City before Carly moved across the street. They'd had a falling out back then, something to do with stolen work in a local art gallery. I hadn't thought about it much until now. When I reached out, Janelle said, "Oh, she's at it again?" I told her everything. Janelle laughed, but it wasn't a friendly laugh. It was bitter. "I got something you might want to see," she said. A day later, she dropped off a flash drive. Inside were photos of art Carly had submitted under her name, but that Janelle had painted. Texts between them arguing over credit. Screenshots from group messages where Carly played the victim and spread lies to mutual friends. This was her pattern. Fake it, steal it, smile through it, and hope no one holds her accountable. I uploaded everything I had into a shared folder. I labeled it Carly Devereux, Pattern of Theft and Harassment. I sent it to Sophie, the production team, and posted it online with a note. If you're making a docuseries about influencers, maybe include the ones who steal from neighbors, ruin family legacies, and lie to cover their tracks. It blew up. Again. This time faster. Janelle went public with her story too. Then a former coworker from Carly's old real estate job dropped a bomb, emails showing Carly forging client signatures to claim extra commissions. That story spread like wildfire in the local papers. A few days later, the white SUV was back, only this time, they weren't filming. They were hauling camera gear back into the trunk. Sophie didn't wave or smile when she passed me. The next morning, Carly's house was listed for sale. But that wasn't all. I got a letter. From a lawyer. Carly was suing me. For defamation, harassment, and emotional distress. She claimed I started a hate campaign, cost her income, and made her fear for her safety. At first I laughed. I didn't think it would go anywhere. But when I showed it to my attorney, he didn't laugh. He looked tired. He told me I needed to start preparing for a real fight. Sometimes the people in the wrong are the loudest in court. He said. Don't assume it'll be obvious to a judge. We need to make this airtight. So I started preparing. Timeline. Photos. Testimonies. Everything. I was done letting her control the story. But then one night, about a week before the first hearing, something happened that took everything to a new level. I came home from the store and found my kitchen door open. Not just unlocked, wide open. The lights were off. Nothing seemed broken. But something was wrong. I walked inside slowly, heart pounding. Then I saw it, on the kitchen table. A single recipe card. My grandmother's handwriting. The one that had been torn during the break-in. It had been missing for months. Now it was sitting in the center of the table, soaked with red wine and smeared with lipstick. There was no note. Just that. Like a threat. Or a message. I stood there for a long time. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just picked it up carefully and slid it into a Ziploc bag. Then I called my lawyer and said, "She wants a fight? She's got one." Because now it wasn't about the cookbook. It wasn't about reputation. It was personal. Real personal. She came into my kitchen again. This time, I'd make sure it was the last time she ever got that close. After that night, everything changed. I didn't just want to stop Carly anymore. I wanted her held accountable in a way she couldn't wriggle out of. No more social media apologies, no more playing the victim, no more walking away with a slap on the wrist. She stepped into my home twice. That crossed every line. So I doubled down. I went through every email, every screenshot, every shred of anything she touched. I printed timelines. Created charts. Connected everything: recipe theft, art fraud, workplace lies, the harassment campaign, even the fake lawsuit. I organized it like a detective. Then I did something that took everything I had in me. I reached out to a local journalist. Her name was Denise Garrow. She'd done some hard-hitting pieces in the past: local political corruption, nursing home abuse, stuff that actually shook things up. I emailed her the entire story. I didn't just send her the evidence. I invited her into my house, showed her the kitchen, let her hold the ruined recipe cards. I told her the whole thing. Start to finish. 3 weeks later, her story dropped. Front page of the Sunday paper. The Stolen Kitchen: How a Neighborhood Feud Exposed a Pattern of Lies, Theft, and Harassment. She didn't hold back. She used Carly's name. Interviewed Janelle, the old coworkers, even a former friend of Carly's from college who said she plagiarized a eulogy back in 2009. I didn't even know about that one. The article hit hard. That same week, Carly's lawsuit against me was quietly dropped. Her lawyer withdrew. Word was she couldn't pay him. Probably spent her savings trying to clean up the fallout from her fake cookbook career. But karma didn't stop there. The police reopened the kitchen break-in case after I showed them the returned recipe card. Turns out, the red wine used to ruin the paper wasn't just random. It was the exact same bottle Carly had posted on Instagram the night before the break-in. Even worse for her, the wine had a very distinct label, a limited release from a Traverse City winery that only ships to members. She was one of them. That gave them cause for a warrant. Inside Carly's house, they found more of my missing recipe pages. A printed early draft of her cookbook, complete with side notes in her handwriting like, "Must change this name," and "Remove Grandma's name here." A voice recorder, one she apparently used for dictation, that still had a clip of her mocking my kitchen and calling it a museum of Midwest depression. It was enough. They charged her with breaking and entering, harassment, and intellectual property theft on the civil side. Nothing violent, she never physically hurt me. But enough to finally drag her into real court. Not family court. Not civil settlement. Criminal court. She pleaded no contest to avoid trial. Took a deal. Got 6 months probation, community service, and a $12,000 restitution order. Most of that was for the damage to my kitchen, and what she made off the book before it was pulled. But the real punishment? She was banned from ever publishing another book under her name as part of a settlement agreement. And her full name now showed up in local and national search results as a documented case of creative fraud. She tried to disappear after that. Her house sat empty for months. Then it finally sold. To a nice older couple from downstate. Quiet. Respectful. One of them makes quilts and brings cookies over now and then. Sometimes I give her rhubarb from my garden. As for me? I finished the book. But not for sale. I printed 50 hardbound copies. I gave one to every relative. One to the local library. One to the Historical Society. I even gave a copy to Denise, the journalist. The rest are in a box in my attic. It's called Grandma's Table, Recipes That Built a Family. It's not flashy. No author bio. No back cover quotes. Just stories and food. Real stories. Real names. Real truth. And one recipe is left blank. Just a title at the top. The one she tried to steal. I left it that way on purpose. No measurements. No instructions. Because some things you don't share. Not unless they're earned.